Nuwa's forces intensify their assault along the border, razing villages before withdrawing, seemingly with no intent to launch a full-scale invasion. This makes things difficult for everyone in Tusukuru, as they do not have enough troops to protect their border from such a massive army. But instead of launching a retaliatory strike, Hakuoro insists on staying entirely on the defensive for the time being, despite Oboro desperately wanting a chance to bring the fight to the enemy. Tuka has surrendered her fate to Hakuoro, as she realized that she was misled by Nuwa and tricked into fighting. Once she hears that Hakuoro has no intention of punishing her, she decides to take her own life, but Hakuoro stops her, entrusting her with Orikeken's body and telling her to bring it back to his homeland. Just as she humbly accepts her new mission, a messenger arrives telling them of another wave of Nuwa's troops advancing along the border. Leaving Tuka, they scramble to meet them in battle. Thanks to better tactics, they are able to win battle after battle, but none of it seems to matter as Nuwa's main army is still too large for them to handle. Still, Hakuoro remains determined to stay on the defensive, asking his friends to trust him. This weighs heavily upon him, and he tells Eruru just how worried he is that a wrong call will bring an end to their country. She comforts him, stating how she believes in him and his ability to make the right decision. Although Nuwa only gets news of defeats from his raiding parties, he is happy with the way things are going. Taking a walk into his dungeons, he visits the mysterious winged man and praises him for the results of his experiments, before stating how he is going to prepare many sacrifices for Hakuoro. Tusukura's soldiers are reaching the end of their ropes, exhausted by constant, endless fighting. It is then that Nuwa marches out all of his troops and starts a full-scale invasion. But his entire army is not moving together, so Hakuoro decides to first bait out all of his men to one location. To achieve it, he takes the battlefield himself. During the skirmish, he gets overwhelmed by Nuwa's soldiers, but suddenly Tuka arrives to his aid. She quickly dispatches all of the attacking soldiers and pledges her sword to Hakuoro, declaring how she finished her task and will now repay her debt to him by serving under him. With the battle over, Tusukura's forces are victorious once again, but they have barely any capable men left to fight. It is then that Hakuoro reveals his plan on leading a small elite unit behind enemy lines and attacking Nuwa's castle while his entire army is occupied in the final battle. Although it is a very risky move, it is the only way he can grasp at victory, racing against time to take Nuwa's head before his army wipes everyone out. And it is thanks to the fact that his entire army is lured out now for the final battle that they can attempt to execute such a plan. The time for the final showdown comes, and Nuwa's massive army clashes with what remains of Tusukura's soldiers. Everyone capable of holding their weapon is there, and yet they are vastly outnumbered. With Binawa's strategic guidance, they are doing their best to fight carefully, drawing out the fight and staying alive as long as possible to give Hakuoro the chance he needs for his mission. At the same time, Hakuoro has made his way to Nuwa's castle, accompanied by Eruru, Tuka, Karura, and a handful of his best men. Just as they break into the castle grounds, Nuwa shows himself, revealing that he was expecting Hakuoro to arrive all along, and he has prepared a grand welcome for him. 3 of his best generals step ahead to face him, but Karura decides to take them on by herself, allowing everyone else to continue after Nuwa. Despite there being 3 of them, they are unable to defeat Karura, and she gets a chance to show off just how powerful she is, as she cleaves one of them clean in half with her massive blade. Inside of the castle, Hakuoro's party is confronted by mindless soldiers who are the result of Nuwa's experiments. Nuwa states how he awakened the blood of the beast within them, but they failed to satisfy him, so he's looking forward to awaken it in Hakuoro next. Those mindless soldiers lunge at Hakuoro's party, and since they keep getting up after being cut down, they start to overwhelm this group. Luckily, Karura has dealt with the generals and arrives just in time to help them out. She takes on the mindless soldiers together with Tuka, cutting open a path for Hakuoro. He uses it to chase after Nuwa, and Eruru follows after him, insisting to be by his side and witness the path he will choose. Once the 2 of them catch up with Nuwa, he reveals how everything he has done so far is only to awaken the beast within Hakuoro, and for his final surprise, he activates the trap he has set all over the city built around the castle. Fires suddenly erupt, engulfing the innocent civilians living there in a deadly inferno. Disgusted by his actions, Hakuoro demands that he stops, but Nuwa refuses, insisting that everything is for Hakuoro's sake and he will sacrifice as many lives as necessary to awaken him, just so he could face the beast within him in battle. The 2 of them exchange a few blows, but just as Nuwa gets the upper hand and disarms Hakuoro, his rage causes something inside to awaken for a moment and he repels the attack. At that moment, Tuka and Karura arrive to provide assistance, but Hakuoro insists on fighting Nuwa on his own. They respect his wishes and Tuka gives him her sword, seeing that he is unarmed. Thanking her, Hakuoro chases after Nuwa and the 2 of them run out into the fiery inferno, where no one will get in the way. In the midst of flames they battle, and even though they appear to be evenly matched, with every passing moment Hakuoro's hatred for Niwa grows and he feels stronger than ever. Niwa calls Hakuoro a beast of disaster, claiming how there will always be wars as long as he exists. Just as Niwa manages to land a blow on him, Hakuoro awakens and transforms into a large beast. Seeing that Niwa realizes he is no match for the creature he just awakened, and he gets torn to pieces in the blink of an eye. As soon as Niwa is dead, Hakuoro calms down and returns to his usual self, with no memory of what just happened. Their battle was observed by the shady-winged man, who remains silent and withdraws as soon as he witnesses the outcome. Heavy rain begins to pour down across the land, extinguishing the flames set by Niwa, his death signaling the end of fighting just in time, as well to ensure Tsukura's forces are not wiped out. As soon as Hakuoro returns to his group, Eruru rushes to his side, shedding tears of joy upon seeing him unharmed. A month has passed since that battle, and things are slowly returning to normal. While everyone in Tsukuru is happy and working hard to rebuild what was destroyed, Hakuoro is still plagued by nightmares of his duel against Niwa. Although he cannot remember exactly what happened, the words that Niwa told him still echo clearly in his mind. Due to the fire, almost the entire city was destroyed, so the small amount of population that survived has a lot to rebuild. Hearing that, Hakuoro declares that they will abandon the ruined city and just have the survivors live in his domain, reluctant to have people return to that place. The following day, Oboro and Benawi are having a sparring match. With the two generals clashing against each other, they attract quite the crowd. Oboro's growth is clearly visible, and he displays his honed skills to the fullest. However, Benawi is still the superior fighter, and he manages to defeat Oboro once more. Entertained by their performance, Karu declares that this reason enough for everyone to celebrate, so the soldiers unwind and make merry. Hakuoro joins them, using this as a chance to escape from his troubled thoughts. That night the nightmares return, and Hakuoro takes solace in what Eruru told him before, which gives him great comfort during this ordeal. Despite Hakuoro declaring to abandon the ruined city, the survivors wish to return to their homeland and rebuild it, regardless of how long it will take them. Hakuoro decides to ponder on their requests, and while he is doing so, he comes upon Eruru as she is reading a story to Yuzuha. Although the story is bittersweet, it also serves to inspire him on what must be done. Taking Eruru, Benawi, and Ertori with him, he pays a visit to the ruined city. Walking off on his own, he takes a good look at the ruins surrounding him. Eruru follows after him, and once he starts to lament over destruction he left behind, she snaps him out of it and shows him a spot where she planted some seeds last time they were here. She tells him how it is important to have the will to grow something anew despite the devastation that is all around. Taking her words to heart, Hakuoro is relieved and gives the approval to the surveyors to return and start rebuilding. Back home, Hakuoro happens upon Kamio as she is flying above the lake surrounded by dancing spirits. Just as he is thinking how she is adored by something otherworldly, an older warrior with an eye patch appears before him. Introducing himself as Genjimaru, he reassures Hakuoro that he harbors no ill will and would just like for Hakuoro to accompany him for a little while. Noticing that he is of the same clan as Tuka, Hakuoro decides to trust his word and humors him. Following him, Hakuoro is brought in front of a person whose head is completely concealed underneath a veiled hood. The person quickly introduces herself, revealing to be Kuya, ruler of Kunakaman. She seems to be familiar with Hakuoro's exploits, and she is very interested to hear how he achieved all what he did in such a short amount of time and against all odds. The two of them start talking, and Hakuoro learns a lot of the religion of her clan. Eventually, Genjimaru interrupts their long conversation, reminding Kuya that it is time they return home. Promising that she will return another time to talk some more, Kuya bids farewell to Hakuoro and leaves. Back home, Hakuoro spends more time by Aruru's side, praising her for her medicinal skills. Hoboro drops by requesting some medicine for hangover, and Hakuoro finds himself relieved that everyone is able to enjoy themselves again. Returning to the palace, Hakuoro is surprised to have an audience with Sikanero. He has brought another curiosity to sell, this time a mystical creature called Mikyun. The cuteness of the furry little animal makes all the girls fawn over it, but Hakuoro is not that interested in purchasing it because it is not a necessity. Eruru remembers that Tsukuru said how a Mikyun liver can cure any illness. Hearing that, Oboro wants to get its liver so he could cure his sister. Sensing danger, the Mikyun releases an ear-piercing screech and runs away. Determined to get its liver, Oboro chases after, followed by Sikanero, who is worried about his merchandise. The Mikyun finds its way to Eruru, who is enjoying some sweet honey together with Yuzuha. Sensing no hostility from them, the Mikyun joins them and they share some honey with the cute creature. Oboro arrives shortly thereafter, asking them to hand over the Mikum, but Aruru refuses to do so, explaining how his name is Gachatera, and he is saying that Oboro will kill him. Hearing that, Oboro still tries to reason with Aruru, telling her that his liver is valuable medicine. But hearing that, Yuzuha quickly understands why he wants the liver and tells him that she would rather stay ill and be cured in that way, even getting upset at Oboro for thinking of doing such a thing. At that point, Hakuoro and Sikanero catch up with Oboro. As soon as Sikanero hears Aruru calling the Mikyume by his name, he reveals that the person who gives the Mikyume its name becomes its master for life. Therefore, he can no longer sell it to anyone else, so Hakuoro will have to make the purchase. Later that night, Genjimaru appears once again to escort Hakuoro to a meeting with Kuya. The two of them spend another night talking, learning more about each other. While Kuya is surprised that Hakuoro's mask does not come off, Hakuoro is even more surprised when he sees that underneath her mask is a young woman, as Hakuoro thought that Kuya was a man all this time. She tells him how the wars began once everyone lost the protection of the great god, and her clan was a powerless one, constantly trampled by the strong ones. But then they were granted an immense power by their god, which allowed them to survive. As everyone is enjoying the peaceful times, news reached them of the slave uprising in Karura's homeland. From what the scouts can tell, the rebels are slowly but surely fighting a losing battle, and it is only a matter of time before they are wiped out. Hearing that the rebel leader's name is Harai, Karura decides to ask Hakuoro to help the rebels. However, Hakuoro does not want to plunge Tusukuru into another war, so he refuses to provide any official assistance. Karura does not give up and tells him that she will offer everything she has to him, even her very soul, if he would provide aid to the rebels. Seeing just how determined she is, Hakuoro decides he will try and figure out a way to help after all. Relieved to hear those words, Karura suddenly strips down and attempts to seal the deal by offering herself to him. Caught off guard, Hakuoro is at a loss of words. To make things worse, Aruru comes by at that moment looking for Hakuoro. She finds the two of them in a compromising position, and instead of reacting to it, she simply leaves without a word. From that moment on, things get awkward between Aruru and Hakuoro, as she is actively trying to avoid him and refuses to even talk to him. Another report comes in, briefing everyone that the time is running out for the rebels. Since Hakuoro cannot officially act or he would involve Tusukuru into another bloody war, Karura kidnaps him in the middle of the night. Just as she is making her way out of the castle, she is found out by Artori, Aruru, Makaru, Yuzuha, Kamio, and Tuka. But instead of stopping Karura, they all decide to come along and help her sneak out in secret. All of them go on a journey to Karura's homeland so they could help the rebels. While on the way, Hakuoro manages to clear up the misunderstanding with Aruru, telling her that there is nothing going on between him and Karura. Arriving at their destination, they are ambushed by the rebel forces. Upon getting questioned about their purpose here, they introduce themselves as mercenaries who have heard of the rebels' struggle and wish to join them. Harai himself is there, but he refuses to accept random mercenaries into his ranks, so he tells them off. Thanks to seeing him and hearing his full name, Hakuoro realizes that Harai is Karura's younger brother, so he asks her what she wishes to do next. But before she can answer, an older man from the rebels approaches them. His name is Katamao, and he has immediately recognized Karura for who she really is, as he has been a loyal servant of her family for a long time. He asks her to return and assume her rightful place as their ruler, but she refuses, stating how she is no longer the person she used to be. Instead, she is simply Karura now. Before they can talk more, a fire is seen in the distance, coming from the direction of the rebel camp. It turns out their location has been revealed to the slavers, and they have come to slaughter them. But before they are wiped out, Hakuoro and his group rush to their aid. The slavers cannot deal with their combat prowess and are quickly forced into a full retreat. Despite what just happened, Harai maintains his arrogant attitude, holding himself superior to others. In order to teach him a lesson, Karura picks a fight with him, still keeping her true identity a secret. Their match is over before it even begins, as she quickly overpowers him with a single move. Seeing what just happened, old man Katamao requests aid from Karura and her group, which they gladly provide. Remembering the past, young Karura, Harai, and Katamao are being chased by slavers in their mansion. In order to give them a chance to escape, Karura stays behind and fights against the intruders, while Katamao escorts Harai to safety. That is the last time the two siblings have seen each other, as she gets captured by the slavers. In the present, Hakuoro's group is proven to be invaluable thanks to their combat prowess. Because of them, the rebels are able to put up a proper stand against the slavers. Since Karura is familiar with the layout of the slavers' castle, she tells them about a secret path they can use to infiltrate it with a smaller strike force, while the rest of the rebels will keep the slavers distracted. The infiltration is successful, and Hakuoro's group, accompanied by Horai, is able to make its way into the enemy castle. Upon reaching the king's chamber, they find it filled with certain white flowers which are said to grow only from corpses of people. Among the flowers is the ruler of the castle, Suwankas. It seems that he was expecting Karura to return to him, and he has prepared a trap for them. A large amount of slavers charge Hakuoro's group, but they prove to be no match for them, and despite their numbers, Hakuoro and his allies are getting the upper hand. All the while, Suwankas is under the delusion that Karura is destined to be with him and keeps proclaiming his twisted love for her, offering her a life of luxury if she assumes her place as empress next to him. But Karura has no interest in doing that, and she quickly shows him just how deluded he is by making short work of his soldiers, leaving the finishing blow to Horai. Thanks to Suwanka's words, Horai realizes that Karura is his long-lost sister. Pressing her on the matter, she continues to feign ignorance, telling him that he should deliver the news of what happened to the rebels who are still fighting outside. Making her promise that she will wait until he returns, Horai quickly rushes to his comrades and declares that Suwankas has been slain, ending the reign of slavery. But while he is doing that, Karura tells everyone that it is time to leave. Despite Iruru suggesting she should spend some time with her brother and catch up, Karura has no interest in doing so. And so Hakuoro and his group swiftly retreat back to their domain. Back home, Hakuoro has a first formal meeting with Horai, who has come with a delegation to thank Tusukuru for their aid in the recent struggle. He is shocked to see that Hakuoro is in fact the ruler of this country. But this allows him to ask about Karura, and Hakuoro reassures him that she is doing just fine. After bidding them farewell, Hakuoro meets up with Karura and tells her that she can still catch up with Horai if she leaves now, and that he is giving her permission to leave if she so desires. But instead of going after her brother, she simply reaffirms her decision to stay by Hakuoro's side, telling him that this is what she wants. An intruder has made her way into Hakuoro's castle, but she is rather clumsy and she attracts the attention of the guards, who start giving chase. Eventually, she manages to make her way to Hakuoro's chambers while loudly protesting the task she was given by Kuya. Hakuoro, who was in the middle of writing some reports, hears her protests and realizes that she must have been sent by Kuya, so when the soldiers come after her, he tells them that she went into a different direction. Hearing what she has to say, Hakuoro learns that her name is Sakuya, and she is here to pick him up this time, as Genjimaro is busy somewhere else. While following her to meet with Kuya, Iruru sees the two of them sneaking away from the castle, so she follows after them. At their meeting place, Hakuoro is shocked to hear that Kuya wants him to marry Sakuya, who happens to be her close friend. Upon hearing that, Iruru is so surprised that she alerts the three of them to her presence. Hakuoro explains who Kuya is and what they are doing here, to make sure there are no misunderstandings again. In addition to that, he manages to convince Kuya to reconsider the marriage arrangement for the time being. Kuya explains that they will not be seeing each other again for a while as her county is going to war, reassuring Hakuoro and Iruru that they do not need to worry as they will not be defeated. She bids them farewell. The following day, Benoe briefs Hakuoro about Kanekamon's enemies. Hakuoro is worried that Kuya's forces will be easily defeated because of the size of their foe, but Benoe explains how Kanekamon is supposedly hiding a secret weapon. Meanwhile, the invading force clashes against Kanekamon's troops, but is suddenly found facing giant robots instead of soldiers. It turns out that Kuya's secret weapon are large mechas which they are able to pilot. Using them, they easily wipe out the invaders, defending their territory with ease. Hakuoro is perplexed by the news of how quickly they won the war. Sakuya shows up and escorts him to meet with Kuya once again. This time, Kuya shows him the secret weapon they were using, explaining how this is a gift bestowed upon them by their god. By talking with her, Hakuoro can tell just how heavily the burden of war is weighing on her young shoulders. Lord from Elemu, one of the forces that invaded Kanekamon, appears at Tusukuru, asking for their aid and explaining how they were coerced into joining the war against Kanekamon, but now they are in fear of a retaliatory strike. To try and conduct peace talks, Hakuoro sends Otori to serve as a mediator, but she is unable to meet with Kuya. Instead, she meets with one of her generals, Hamakwa, who was left in charge of the citation. He refuses to negotiate and makes fun of Otori for worshipping the wrong god instead. Once she leaves, it is revealed that he is in fact working together with the same mysterious winged man from before who used to be at Niwa's side. Shortly thereafter, news of Kanekamon retaliating against Elemu reaches Hakuoro. Led by Hawenkwa, Kanekamon's mechas completely destroy Elemu and slaughter the entire clan. Back at their castle, Kuya questions why Hawenkwa went to such an extreme, but instead of regretting his actions or apologizing, he states that he did it all for her sake, to make sure they would not be scorned by those they defeat in battle. Although she is upset at him, she blames herself for not making her orders clear enough to avoid such a misinterpretation, so she does not punish him for what he did. In addition to that, another one of her generals, Heen, chimes in and suggests they should use the power they have to unify all the lands and put an end to all the wars. Hearing that, Hawenkwa adds that it would be fitting if they would rule over all of them, but this does not sit well with Heen and the two start arguing. At that moment, Genjimaru comes and diffuses the situation, suggesting they should not focus on expanding their territory, but solidify the land they already rule over. Relieved to hear his counsel, Kuya decides to follow through with his suggestion instead of listening to the other generals. Suddenly, Hakuoro gets news of more nations banding together to attack Kanekaman. All of their attacks end up the same, as none are able to stand up to the powerful robots. But all the fighting ends up hurting Kanekaman's innocent villagers, who beg of Kuya to use the power they have and put an end to it all. It turns out that the mysterious winged man is pulling the strings behind the attacks as more and more countries start attacking Kanekaman out of nowhere. With the war ravaging their land, Kuya's generals keep insisting that they use their mechas and show the world their power. With Jinjumaru away on a mission, Kuya is forced to make a decision on her own, and remembering the pleas of her people to save them from suffering, she decides to change to the offensive. Stating how she will unite all countries with her power, she declares war on everyone. Her war campaign is fast and countries start falling one after the other, unable to defend against the powerful robots. In response to that, Hakuoro orders for defenses of Tusukuru to be bolstered, hoping that they will not have to fight. Genjimaru tries to convince Kuya to abandon the war campaign once she sets her aim at the Onkamiya Mukai, but she is no longer listening to him. Unbeknownst to Kuya, the Onkamiya Mukai have a secret weapon of their own, and they trap her mechas in a powerful seal. But as they are casting this spell, the winged man appears in their base and disrupts the magic, destroying the seal and allowing Kuya to continue her advance. The leader of the Onkamiya Mukai is perplexed at how someone could disrupt their great seal, even more so when he sees who is behind it, revealing that the mysterious winged man's name is D, and he is quite familiar with him. With the Great Seal gone, Onkamiya Mukai fall to Kuya's mechas, and she sets her sights on Tusukuru next, ordering Hawenkwa to bring Hakuoro before her. He gladly accepts the mission and sets out to advance towards them. The news of Onkamiya Mukai falling shakes up Ratori and Kamio, and Ratori assumes her position as next in line to lead the clan. But before much can be done, news about Kanekaman's troops advancing towards Tusukuru reach Hakuoro, and in order to avoid unnecessary casualties, he orders the evacuation of the capital. They hastily set up defenses in front of the city to buy time for the people to get to safety and prevent them from capturing Hakuoro. Their determination serves little to help them, as they prove to be no match in a head-on fight against the giant mechas, with their swords and arrows unable to harm them. Heen is present in the attack, and he is trying to get Hawenkwa to focus on the mission, but Hawenkwa is too absorbed in his sadistic bloodlust and continues wreaking havoc along the way. Seeing that they will not be able to evacuate the civilians in time, Hakuoro takes to the battlefield, hoping to serve as a distraction and allowing everyone to get away. His distraction works, and he manages to bait Hawenkwa to follow after him together with two of his underlings. Disobeying Hakuoro's orders, Tuka and Karura also decide to help with the distraction, and they get in the way of Heen, keeping him occupied. Cutting off Hakuoro's escape path, Hawenkwa forces him into a head-on confrontation. While Hakuoro is busy avoiding the deadly attacks, his memories start coming back. The shock from that causes him to lose focus and he gets knocked down. At that moment, Ururu comes to his aid, riding on Mucker's back. Even though Hakuoro was telling her to run away to safety, she refuses to listen to him and fights against Hawenkwa to protect him. Ururu notices that Ururu is missing and starts looking for her in a panic. In their confrontation, Ururu gets hit by Hawenkwa, and he shows no mercy, immediately delivering the finishing blow and killing her on the spot. Witnessing that, Hakuoro cradles her lifeless body and screams out in pain. Ururu arrives just in time to see the two of them getting stomped on by Hawenkwa. Just as she starts screaming in despair, a dark mist appears and engulfs Hawenkwa's mecha, disintegrating its foot. From underneath it, a giant monster appears, bearing a striking resemblance to the design of the robots. On its head, the same mark as the one that adorns Hakuoro's mask is visible. The monster starts fighting the robots, easily breaking them into pieces with its overwhelming strength. Ururu quickly rushes to Ururu's side, but as she cradles her body, she realizes that Ururu is already dead. A fragment of Hakuoro's memory returns, remembering a time when he was a scientist in a futuristic laboratory. There he stumbled upon the origin of mankind, the so-called missing link that caused them to evolve from apes into intelligent beings. Another scientist wanted to keep that information secret, so he shot him, killing him in front of the fossilized remains of the creature that supposedly caused humans to evolve. The blood seeped into the fossil, giving it life once again, which caused it to form a pact with him. It is that fossilized creature that is now rampaging against the robots, making short work of them. As Hawenqua's mech is torn apart, he escapes out of it and runs away. Unable to cope with what just happened, he keeps crying for his mother to save him. But the creature does not pursue. Instead, it changes its attention to Aruru and Aruru. Its dark mist engulfs Aruru, restoring her broken body and reviving her. Aruru suddenly remembers a sealed memory of the time the earthquake shook the forest near her home. She was looking for Aruru, but all she found was her lifeless body as she fell from a tree because of the quake and died. While she was pleading for anyone or anything to save Aruru, the same creature appeared before her, giving her the choice to save Aruru if she surrenders her body and soul to it. She agreed, and suddenly Aruru was brought back among the living. In the present, Aruru is overjoyed to see Aruru alive again, but is shocked to realize that this terrifying creature is none other than Hakuoro, as Aruru immediately recognizes him despite his monstrous form. Back at the castle, Hakuoro awakens some time later. The recent events are like a foggy dream to him, and he is not sure what happened after Aruru died. Since Aruru is by his side, he questions her, but she tells him there is nothing to worry about as Aruru is healthy and playing outside with Mukuru. She quickly excuses herself, leaving Hakuoro behind on his own, leaving him confused as to what just happened and what exactly he is. News of the shocking defeat suffered by Hawenqua's unit reaches Kuya. Genjimaru tries to use this as an argument for her to stop her conquest, but she does not back down. Noticing Dis' presence nearby, Genjimaru pursues after him, questioning him about his intentions. Instead of answering his question, Dis speaks to Genjimaru with no familiarity, telling him that the time has come. This is enough for Genjimaru to understand who Dis truly is, but he is left wondering why he has awakened so soon. Back in Tusukuru, Aruru is getting depressed, thinking that her feelings for Hakuoro are there because of the contract she formed with him. Hakuoro, on the other hand, is shaken by another memory of the past. He finds himself back in a futuristic laboratory of sorts. There he sees himself wearing the same mask as now. A holographic projection of another scientist appears before his past self, calling him Iceman. Apparently, Iceman has also lost all of his memories. A girl very similar to Aruru is there to tend to Iceman, and Hakuoro learns that this girl is a test subject, which the scientists are not allowed to give names to. But the scientist talking to Iceman seems to have a kind heart, and he suggests that Iceman should give her a lovely name. He tells Iceman to immediately let him know should he remember anything at all. Iceman promises to do so and decides to name the girl Mikoto. Just then, Hakuoro awakens to Aruru calling out to him. He had suddenly collapsed in his office, so she was worried about him. Genjimaru and Sakuya manage to flee from Kanekaman and come straight to Hakuoro. It turns out that Genjimaru has decided to fight against Kuya in order to set her back on the right path, as the way things are going now will only ensure the destruction of her clan. Knowing that Genjimaru is a loyal and honorable person, Hakuoro decides to trust him, and he allows him to join Tusukuru. In order to put up a proper front against Kanekaman, they need to form an alliance with all the countries. To achieve that, Genjimaru suggests they rescue the High Priest of Onkamiyama Yukai, who is still alive and held in prison at a certain location. Hakuoro decides to send a large force led by Genjimaru and Banawi to facilitate the rescue. While Aruru is struggling with her feelings, she is visited by Ertori. It turns out that Ertori knew from the moment she met Hakuoro who he really is, but she kept it a secret, as it is not knowledge anyone shall be burdened with. After all, she is a priestess of the Onkamiyama Yukai, and her destiny is to worship and protect their god, who is in fact none other than Hakuoro. Ertori proceeds to tell Aruru that she knows what worries her, explaining that gods cannot affect feelings. After all, their contracts do not extend to the human heart. Hearing that is a huge relief to Aruru, and she hurries back to Hakuoro's side. There she promises to him once again that she will always stay by his side. Genjimaru and Benoist's unit returns back with the High Priest, much to the relief of Ertori and Kamyu, who are happy to see their father safe and sound. But instead of assuming the suggested role and uniting all the countries, he resigns from his place as the High Priest and appoints Ertori to be the next one, making this her duty now. She conducts herself admirably, and soon enough a massive force is gathered under Hakuoro's command to oppose Kanekaman. While they are marching towards Kanekaman, they are attacked by more mindless humanoids created by Dis, who all seem to be wearing a mask similar to Hakuoro's. Seeing that Genjimaru is among Hakuoro's troops, Dis teleports him into the palace, but Hakuoro gets caught in the teleportation spell. Noticing something is about to happen to him, Eruru jumps into Hakuoro's embrace, and the three of them get teleported right in front of Kuya. They try to convince her to step down and surrender, but she refuses to listen to reason and instead gets in her mecha. Telling them that this is how it has to be, she starts fighting against Hakuoro. But thanks to Genjimaru giving him his sword and telling him where the robot's weak point is, Hakuoro is able to emerge victorious. Even though Kuya does not want to admit defeat, she does not have it in her to try and take Hakuoro's life directly with her own hands. At that moment, the rest of Hakuoro's allies arrive and she realizes it is over. Hakuoro promises that he will treat her people fairly, and upon hearing that Kuya gives up, leaving her fate up to him. It is then that D makes his appearance. Urtori and Kamiya recognize him immediately, explaining that he used to be one of their own. This is all very confusing to Kuya, even more so when D questions her why she is not putting the devices he gave her clan to good use. Suddenly, Hawenko attacks Kuya, knocking her out. Seeing that Hakuoro is about to release his power, Urtori speaks directly into his mind and reassures him that she will bring everyone to safety, so he can stop holding back. But not everyone gets teleported, as Genjimaru stays behind to protect Kuya, who was unable to leave due to D's interference. Determined to kill Genjimaru, Hawenko attacks him, but Hakuoro releases his power and transforms into the same creature as before, stopping Hawenko in his tracks. Even with Hien backing him up, Hawenko is unable to win in a head-on battle against Hakuoro in this form, and before long, both of them are slain. This does not please D, who states how there is now no one to fight Hakuoro, as the two of them are never supposed to fight each other directly. In order to amend that, he calls for Kamyu, who is also not teleported away, but instead hidden behind a pillar to observe what will happen. She explains that she remained because she was worried, but before she can say anything else, D awakens the soul sleeping within her, calling forth Matsumi. Suddenly, Kamyu is overtaken by Matsumi's spirit, who refers to D as her father. D orders her to keep Hakuoro occupied while he has a chat with Genjimaru. Genjimaru attempts to convince D to release Kuya from the contract her father formed with him, but D insists that the contract is absolute. Seeing that D will not budge on that matter, Genjimaru tells him that the days he was able to serve him were filled with joy, and he does not regret them one bit. He draws his sword at D, and despite D's warning, he charges at him, stabbing him with the intent to kill. Kuya wakes up just in time to see Genjimaru face the consequences of breaking the contract, as his body is obliterated right in front of her, while the wound on D disappears without a trace. Deciding to honor his sacrifice, D declares that his contract with Kuya's clan is now void, and it is time to leave. Before joining him, Matsumi decides it is fitting to punish Kuya for going against her father's wishes, and she invokes a ray of light from the sky that causes a massive explosion where Kunakaman's capital city is standing, razing it to the ground. Before leaving, D states how the two of them will always be locked in this endless fight, referring to Hakuoro as his other half. Out of the blazing inferno, Hakuoro comes out in his human form carrying Kuya, who is unharmed thanks to his protection. Back at the castle, Urtori explains to Hakuoro what happened to Kamyu, telling him how the spirit of their ancestor reincarnates in the bodies of her people throughout time. Its purpose being to reunite with their god. She tells him about a secret temple where Kamyu has most likely gone to, and begs of him to save Kamiyu's soul. Before leaving, Hakuoro has a private chat with Oboro, tasking him to take over and lead everyone once he is gone. But before Oboro can question him on what he means, Eruru comes to fetch Hakuoro, telling him that Kuya has woken up. But it turns out that the shock of the recent events was too much for her mind to withstand, and she has regressed to the mental state of a little child, only being able to recognize Hakuoro. Hakuoro feels personally responsible for allowing such a thing to happen to her, and he leaves it up to Sakuya to take care of her. Even though he does not want to involve anyone else in the fight ahead, Aruru and Eruru refuse to leave his side and are determined to join him on his quest to save Kamyu. And it is not just them. When he tries to leave the castle, Banawi, Kuru, Oboro, Suka, Karura, Dori, Gura, and Urtori are there to tag along, none of them willing to be left behind. Their journey brings them to the land of Onkamiyamukai, where they arrive at the location of the temple. Urotri opens the seal, granting them entry inside of it, but at that moment they are confronted by a large amount of red slimes as well as Matsumi. She does not allow them entry and has the slimes attack them. Despite the opposition, they are determined to bring her back and save Kamiya's soul. She runs deeper into the temple, causing Hakuoro, Eruru, and Aruru to quickly give chase, while the rest remains behind to fight the slimes. They quickly reach a dead end as a tightly shut door is in front of them, but unexpectedly, Eruru's accessory, which she always wears on her hair, starts vibrating. The door responds to it and suddenly opens, revealing a very futuristic mechanism behind. This causes another set of memories to return to Hakuoro. He remembers his time as Iceman, when the scientist told him that he was only woken up for experiments in order to make humans resilient enough to return to the life on the surface of the planet. But since they made no progress, he is going to be frozen again. However, the scientist has had enough of playing God and conducting unethical experiments, so he sets Iceman, Mikoto, and the rest of the test subjects free, giving them a chance to escape from the underground facility and live a happy life. Iceman invites the scientist to come with them, but he refuses, stating how his frail human body cannot survive life above ground. With those parting words, Iceman and the test subjects escape from the facility. Remembering how Matsumi was one of the experiments created in the facility, Hakuoro snaps out of the dreamlike state and finds himself, Eruru and Aruru facing against Matsumi. She is determined to stop them from reaching D, and so she starts to fight Hakuoro for real, but he has no intention of fighting her. Just as she is about to blast him with magic, Aruru steps in the way and asks her to stop it so they can return home together. Seeing Aruru breaks through to her and she stops, struggling to maintain her current state. It is then that D appears and tells Hakuoro to stop. He explains that all he did was out of love for his children, because having them fight and struggle helps them grow and evolve. Hakuoro refuses to accept that, and the two of them argue about who is in the right and whose ideology causes more suffering. Matsumi elaborates, stating how the two of them are two parts of the same soul, and that is why they cannot see eye to eye when they are separated like this. D concedes, telling Hakuoro that he has won this time and he can do as he wishes with the world until the time for his sleep comes. This time he wants to confront D and put an end to their cursed fate. The two of them change into their true forms and the temple is no longer able to hold them. Sensing danger, everyone who was left fighting slimes retreats, only to see the two monstrosities burst out and get ready to fight. They quickly realize that they are witnessing two gods, or rather two halves of the same god clash, one of which is none other than Hakuoro. The two of them fight without holding anything back, and Hakuoro has a hard time resisting the urge to lose himself in combat. The intense fight helps Hakuoro remember more of his time as Iceman. He remembers how he lived with Mikoto, and they had a baby together. He gave the baby a gift left behind by the scientist who set them free, which turns out to be the accessory Eruru is wearing now. But they got found out by humans and captured. Sedating him, they brought Iceman back into the facility, where another scientist has taken over the project and managed to create masks that simulate his power. The scientist explains how this will boost the strength of their bodies, allowing them to return to the surface once again. But Iceman is only interested in hearing where Mikoto is. To his dismay, he learns that she was found out to be a valuable research subject, so they dissected her for experiments. When the scientist laughs and reassures him that he can make countless clones of her for his pleasure, Iceman loses it. Awakening his godly powers, he frees himself from his bonds and curses humanity with exactly what they were seeking: powerful, immortal bodies, more specifically slimes. Panic breaks out in the facility as one after the other humans start turning into red slimes. While he is lost in his rage, he pleads for someone to stop him, not wanting to bring destruction upon the world. It is Matsumi that hears his plea, and she activates the ray of light, which turns out to be a powerful laser from a satellite in the orbit. However, not even that is powerful enough to kill him, so instead she seals him into the land itself. During the process, his spirit splits into two, forcing him into a sleep without being reunited with his other half. Deciding that the world is better off without him interfering in the lives of his children, Hakuoro manages to accept what must be done and absorbs his other half back into himself. Before his other half can break free, he tells Ertori to seal him away. Ertori is reluctant, but Matsumi encourages her, telling her that she will bear the sin of sealing her god with her. With that said, she leaves Kamiya's body, returning her spirit to her. Together, Kamiya and Ertori channel the seal, while everyone else strikes down Hakuoro's other half as it starts trying to break free. The seal works and his godly body is absorbed deep into the land, his residual power allowing him a few more moments to say his farewells with everyone. He entrusts the future of Tsukuru and the world to them, giving all of them a personal message, essentially telling them to live their lives to the fullest. The farewell falls hard on everyone, especially so when the turn for Aruru and Eruru comes around. Although Eruru reassures him that she will take care of things in his absence, once he turns around to leave, she can no longer hold her feelings back. It is then that she pours her heart out, telling him just how important he is to her and how much she loves him. Hakuoro realizes that she must be Mikoto's reincarnation, and although it pains him greatly, he tells her to stay away, wishing for her to move on. But she refuses to listen to him, and against his wishes rushes after him, proving that she is not bound by his will or the contract. She pulls him into a loving embrace and kisses him. While in the embrace, Hakuoro promises that there will come a day when they will meet again. Years pass and Oboro is setting out on journey together with Dori and Gara. Yuzutha has passed away, and he wishes to gain more experience and grow as a person before taking over as the next ruler. Leaving Benawi and Kuru to watch over Tusukuru. Everyone else is also engrossed in their duties and adventures, but most importantly, they are all doing well and peace reigns over the land. Aruru continued her work as a healer, and one day as she is tending to the minor injuries of some village folk, she starts thinking of Hakuoro. Noticing someone approaching, she turns around, shows the person a gentle, loving smile, hinting at the fact that the person is in fact Hakuoro.